name's Dave Koska with ThermalNetics. This training is on the evaporator fan section of the mini split system. This device right here is a remote control that you can set your temperatures and fan speeds to, and damper positionings where the air blows out at. The next item I would like to talk about is the actual fan coil itself. This unit requires very little maintenance. To access the filter, there's tabs on each side of the front cover plate. The front cover plate lifts up to about a 90-degree position, and there's screen filters in there that you pull out and you wash gently, and then you put them back in. And when you wash out the filters, please take some water and just pour gently over the evaporator coil and clean out any line stuff that's in the condensate. This unit does have power from a breaker, so if you do need to turn power off, I believe you'd have to go up to the unit to kill the condensing unit, to kill the power to this, to service it. Please lock out and tag out at least once a year all your electrical connections. And on the right side panel here, when you take the cover up at a 90-degree angle, you will see a control panel there with some wires attached to it. Check those at least once a year. That will conclude the training on this.
I have a question for you. By those little condensate pumps, is there yearly cleaning?
There's no cleaning clean out, they're just flushing. Like water, vinegar.
In case you ever hear.
Oh, I know. They suck. I mean, I give it maybe another month or two and they're going to put the residential style kind that you sit on.
The only reason I ask, we throw a bit in. The only reason I ask, because the school didn't realize they should clean them, because like in the summer months when the kids are at school, they're not using them. So then when they go to kick them back in, that little pump, if it ain't cleaned out, it'll clog up.
And the reality is people don't really clean it as often as they should. They'll change or clean the filter more than they will clean that pump. So that's when I mentioned at the time to flush it out. Yeah. You could use vinegar and a mixture of water and vinegar to clean it out, or flush it out and try to get it. Yeah. The downside with that is sometimes that black mold in there will end up plugging it up as you flush it and clean it out. So yes, the right way to do it is clean it. I cannot tell you how frequently. Everyone's different. Every job is different. I recommend upgrading to a little larger one. This is a condensing section of that evaporator mini split system that we just talked about. On this unit here, there is very little maintenance. The only thing you really have to do is, if you look on the back side, over here is a condenser coil. Keep this coil clean. No pressure washer, no chemicals, just a nice rinsing. And to properly do it, you lock out, tag out, kill power, take the top off, and go from the inside out. Also at the same time, after you lock out and tag out, take the cover off here and you check your electrical connections. Make sure they're nice and tight. Do that at least once a year. The fan itself requires no maintenance, there's no grease, there's no belts. And that fan will run at different speeds throughout the operation. Some days it might be fast, some days it might be really slow, some days it might not even need to come on. And that will conclude the training on the condenser. This is another condenser. Inside of here is a compressor section and the condenser section, and it also has condenser fans on top. These condenser fans require zero maintenance as well. If they go bad, you just replace them. At least once a year, you lock out, tag out. Over here, you take off the top cover panel and you would check all your electrical connections. Also, to rinse and clean the condenser coils, the proper way is to remove the covers here and the top and go from the inside out. No chemicals, no pressure washer, just a gentle rinsing. And if you do it frequently enough, you will not require chemicals or a hard wash or rinse. And that will conclude the training on this.
The only question I've got out of that is it a seasonal rinse? How often?
I can't tell you that, because this might be in a Sierra desert where no trees are around. This might be cottonwood. I don't know the environment to know how often that this is going to require a cleaning. That is 100% visual. There's no BMS to measure that. The BMS will show you the result of a bad or dirty coil. It'll shut off on high pressure and the BMS will get an alarm. That's when you first come up here and check if it's clean or not and the condenser fans are operating. Yeah, so I cannot tell you how often to clean it. Is 100% visual inspection. This is a Daikin rooftop unit. This section here is your control cabinet. You access this unit by unlatching the hinges, door locks. And now you have access to your control panel. Inside here is how we're going to shut it down to do some very light maintenance, and we're also going to do some visual inspections. So we're only going to kill control voltage, we're not going to kill main power voltage. To do that, you're going to have to enter password. Password is 6363. You do that by hitting the enter button, turning the dial, enter twice, turn the dial, till you get to the 4-digit section and you enter 6363. Now you know you did that right because you have 18 items instead of 4. You will scroll down to control mode, enter, and then scroll to off. Now the unit is doing a quiet shutdown. Inside this section is all your control components, including the BMS control component or the building management system control component. You have some transformers here. They do have a resettable fuse on them here. If it does trip, please follow up through the print here on what might have caused that, what that transformer controls. Once a year when you turn it off gently here, and then you kill power over at the disconnect and lock out and tag out, you check all your electrical connections in here. Daikin labels all of their wiring, so if you pull out a wire, it'll tell you where it goes.
So aside from the password part up there, is there anything else hands-on in that box?
Not necessarily hands-on, but I would also reference this device when there's an alarm. If your building management system says there's a high pressure alarm, before you go down a rabbit trail, take this and make sure it says the same thing. Sometimes they get mixed up when they're writing these alarm points, and there's potential problems with that. So always reference this as your problem, your source of your problem first.
And if they have any problems with that, that's outside of their wheelhouse, who do they call?
ThermalNetics or Bumbler, I'm not sure the proper protocol, it's Bumbler I believe, will be your first phone call, and then they'll get a hold of ThermalNetics if they need to. There is an alternative to shutting off the control mode when you want to do a soft shutdown. You can do it through your building management system first, and then you could also confirm it up at the remote Microtech keypad up here, just to make sure. I also want to point out really quick, if you could zoom in up here, there is an alarm on this alarm menu on this item. If you have an alarm, the last digit will be an alarm bell blinking. And to see what that is, you hit the alarm button, and then active alarms will come up, and then you hit enter. We don't have any alarms set currently, so there's nothing to show us, but that's where you'll find the current alarm. That's good for now. Let's move on to the next control panel. Inside of here is your higher voltage control compartments. As you can see, you have your incoming voltage powering up the unit coming through that panel. If you could get a side view of it, there are fuses back in there to the left that say L1, 2, and 3. Those fuses power up, or so, not power up, they monitor or watch the voltage feeding the condenser fan drives. If there's a problem on one of those drives, those fuses could blow. Also, you have these 2 condenser fan drives. Yes, there is a screen missing, but they do not supply another screen. This screen pops out and can be put onto this drive too. It's transferable. That's why there's only one display. These are the condenser fans. Here are your overloads for your motors and fans. And I like to point out the word tripped on them. They're at the 10, 11 o'clock position if you're looking straight at them. If an overload trips, please shut the unit down, kill power, and then reset it. You could cause a problem if there's a short, if there's anything that causes that to trip. Doing it live is not the safest way to do it. And this panel here, after you shut down through the building management system, confirm it at the control side, then you would shut your disconnect off here, lock out, tag out, and check out all your electrical connections in here and in the compressor section. We'll get to that in a minute. Also, I'd like to point out there is a display for the burner section on the left side of the cabinet there. Currently it probably says the word off, I imagine. Yes, we're not calling for anything right now, but that gives you the display on the modulation of the gas-fired furnace. While we're over in this section, I also like to talk about the microchannel condenser that sits above the control panel or high voltage panel here. That is a very thin coil. No pressure washer, no chemicals. When it gets dirty, the right way to clean it is from inside and out with the water. To do that, lock out, tag out your power, climb up on top, take off just the cover of the condenser fans and get a hose in there and clean them out. It's a lot easier than trying to take off one of these triangle pieces. I've tried both. Moving on to the next compartment. This is our gas burner section of our rooftop. This operates two burners. One is a high and low up here. One down here is a modulating burner. So there are times where you're going to see very little flame coming out and times when you're going to see this thing go full capacity. I believe it's based on discharge air temperature that will require that to be that operation. And just like any direct fired burner, you're going to eventually have to clean sparker, electrode, maybe wash the burners. Just a fine piece of sandcloth or a wire brush to clean all those up. Or if you're not comfortable doing that, you can call ThermalNetics for the parts and just replace them as needed. The motor here is non-maintenance motor. There's no grease or bearings or anything there's bearings, but there's nothing to oil or maintain. This does condensate. If you want to come on here really quick, you will see condensation pile up in here, and eventually, if it gets bad enough, it will drain out this copper drain here. There's no pressure on that water, it's just gravity. Moving on to the next section. This is our supply fan section, and you can also see the heat exchanger from this angle as well. Inside of there are ECM, or electronically communicated motors. They all move at the same speed. So if one of them, or if they're getting a 10 volt signal, they're all going to go at 10 volts or high speed, 5 volts, etc. They all run at the same speed. The beauty part of these, though, compared to the old designs, where if you lose a fan or one of them fails you, you still got 3 others to keep up. In the old world, if you lost a supply fan, you're dead in the water till you got replaced. No maintenance on these. No grease, nothing to oil, no belts. If they do fail, you replace the whole thing, the wheel and the whole motor, because it is a programmed device on the back of that motor. If you do have to replace a motor and you're on there's a time frame you have to wait for it, you get a piece of sheet metal, take this out, get a piece of sheet metal and block off the section that the bad fan is and take that out, so you can try to keep your motors running and keep up the CFM as high as it could as needed. They do get shipped with a block off plate, but 99.9% of the times I've seen it get thrown out as scrap. This is your evaporator and your reheat section, or dehum section. There's 2 coils in there. One is your evaporator and one is your hot gas coil for dehum, dehumidification. Really no maintenance on there. The true maintenance will be on the air entering coil side that we'll get to in a minute. A lot happening in here. This is your filter section. As you can see, these filters look pretty decent. Return air. And the top air is at the top behind the control cabinet there. These are overloads for your return or exhaust fans, and those are duct resets for your return, low pressure and high pressure static. As part of your shutdown, when you check out your electrical connections, this is a cabinet that you look at too, and you also make sure that your actuator is tight to the jack arm for the damper sections here, so it doesn't slip on you over time. And up here as well. Over on this side is access to your returned fan section or exhaust fan section. Daikin calls them both. Just like the supply fan ECM motors, no maintenance. If one fails though, you replace it. It's not as critical on this to block off the fan. Let me rephrase that. This building might be as critical, so if you do have to get a fan, you should probably block it off as well. I'm not sure of the static considerations regarding this part of it. But it is, and I've seen those unfortunately thrown out as well, so something might have to be made. No maintenance though on these. Up above is what I call bird screens or leaf screens. The air enters the unit from here, but periodically, and again this is a visual, this isn't a timed thing, is these screens are going to have to be washed. All you do is unscrew the top brackets, they drop down and the filters come out. Just a good rinsing. You don't have to, unless they get neglected, you don't have to use a pressure washer or chemicals on them. If you do it on a regular basis, then they should just a gentle hose. And I tap all the water out and dry them the best you can, because it could get sucked into the filters and cause a mess too after you wash them. Moving on to this side. These dampers on both are barometric. There's no actuator. Sometimes they'll be open like this, sometimes they'll be open like this. It's all on air pressure. Here's just another access for your filters. This is your condensate trap for your evaporator. I recommend taking out this plug. Hopefully you don't lose it. Or if you're afraid of that, you can take this plug off, fill this trap up with antifreeze for the winter time, because it will crack if you don't. Either way, this should be protected in the cold winter months. This is just the backside of your refrigeration system. I will point out there is no need to really go into this cabinet. This is where all the inverter boards are. There's a lot of stored energy inside of these circuit boards. If anything happens in here, I recommend calling for service. Just so you know the location of it, this is what controls your inverter compressors and fans, condenser fans. Moving on here, this is your inverter compressor. These three are standard, just on and off. This one will modulate or ramp up and down based on demand. In conjunction with condenser fans on the top, will also modulate based on demand, up and down. Only maintenance to do is pull off the covers for the pecker heads here and check all your electrical connections. And then walk around at least once a year and put your hand on the heaters. Make sure they're warm. These are very important that sometimes get overlooked. If they're not operating when the unit is in the off position, refrigerant will migrate into here, liquid refrigerant. And if these compressors fail, or if these crankcase heaters fail, that liquid refrigerant could cause internal damage to the compressor. These things boil off the liquid to a gas so it doesn't damage the compressor. So they are important. And that will bring us back full around to our starting section.
Around the corner, you mentioned there's a box covered that they will never have to take off. What kind of error indicators would require them to recognize that the problem's in that box?
If you have a problem inside the inverter control box, their symptoms of that would be inverter compressor alarms, your condenser fans not operating, non-communication between the main controller and the inverter board. There's a whole variety of alarms that could happen generated from that inverter section. I'm going to turn it back on now. Did we leave the supply? Yeah, we should shut the doors. We got time though. It won't happen right away. Have to enter password again because it timed out. Oops. AutoNet is where you'd like to be. That leaves the networking control of the unit, and we're in start mode. For further information, this unit is provided with a manual that goes into really depth detail regarding alarms, preventive maintenance, and any kind of problems or identifications of components is all inside this manual. I do recommend reading it and staying current on this as this continues.